Hello everyone, this is Timothy Mark with Alexandria.
Hello everybody.
And today's show will be on the vampire culture in New Orleans. But before we get into that, I'm going to talk about what I've started doing recently. I started preaching again. For a lot of people that don't know, I spent 4 years as a preacher in the state of Georgia. And so now I'm back to preaching. There's a group page called Mules for the Lord on Facebook right now. And so yeah, anybody can join that one and look for Bible trivia and interesting biblical facts on there. So I'm back to preaching. So I'm not perfect yet, but hopefully I'm on my way to being there. But with that being said, we like to embrace other people's cultures or beliefs, and I don't really understand the whole vampire thing myself, and so that's why we have a guest who's going to be on the show. Cedric Whittaker is going to be on the show, and he's out of New Orleans, and so hopefully he can educate us on that a little bit. And so even though I am a preacher, I do co-run Tickle Trunk of Horrors with Alexandria, and so we will be talking about many different topics outside of my religion as well as in my religion, which is Judeo-Christianity. Our website is tickletrunkofhorrors.com, and the email, if you want to contact us, is tickletrunkofhorrors@gmail.com. And that theme song you heard was by Ryan Daughtery out of the UK. And he's got a website called Ryan Daughtery Music. Daughtery Music. It's DOHERTY and then a dash music, so .com. For Ryan, RYAN. So Ryan Daughtery Music. Okay, so let's get into today's topic. What you got to talk about as far as this?
Well, before we welcome our special guest, Cedric Whittaker, who is a vampire elder with the Sabretooth Clan in New Orleans, which is a vampire lifestyle. But before we get into that and discuss what that's all about, a lot of people have had fascinations with vampires. And let's face it, folks, when people think of vampires, you know, the usual image that comes to your mind is, again, the famous fictional bloodsuckers like Dracula, or really his historic counterpart, Vlad the Impaler. And Timothy did write an awesome book on Vlad the Impaler as well. And perhaps for some of our younger listeners out there, right away when you think of vampire, you think of True Blood, The Lost Boys, or the very sparkly vampires of the Twilight series.
Oh God, I hated Twilight, man. Let me tell you, that was one of the most...
Well, that's for the younger
generation. That's well, more for young girls, I think.
Teenagers, of course. And then, but there have been plenty of vampire tales that really have stemmed from real events or real people. And I'm sort of going to give a quick overview, a list of 10 of vampires that a lot of you may have not heard of. And number 10 is Peter Pologowicz. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, but he was a man from the 1700s Serbia who died, and except for, according to some, he really actually didn't stay dead. Within 10 weeks of his death, 9 people died suddenly from a mysterious illness. And prior to their deaths, they all accused Peter of throttling them in their dreams. So that is a man in the 1700s. And number 9 is the Alnwick Castle vampire. And actually, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's ALNWICK Castle vampire. Really, actually predates the term vampires. And the events were recorded by an English chronicler named William of Newburgh. He reported the story of a man who returned from the dead after he died while spying on his cheating wife. And he actually spread a plague. So that was number 9. Number 8 is the Highgate vampire. And in 1969, dead animals completely drained of blood and sporting neck wounds began to appear in Highgate Cemetery in London, and several witnesses reported a tall, dark figure that really emitted an evil aura. So that was number 8. Number 7 was Sava Savanovic. Sava Savanovic. And say hello again to Sava. Sava was a Serbian vampire. Now this is the second vampire creature that comes from Serbia, who lived in an old mill and fed on unwary travelers and millers who approached the mill after dark. And that's another one. Number 6, the vampire of Croglan Grange. The vampire of Croglan Grange. And this was in the 1800s when the Cranwell family took up residence in Croglan Range in Cumbria. And Lady Cranwell noticed strange lights in the garden below. And she was frozen in fear, and she seen a figure that was a figure in the dark, and actually she was seen to be bleeding profusely from the neck as a cat-like figure darted out of the darkness. So very, very interesting. Number 5 was Jurgi Grando, and it's J-U-R-E. Have you heard of any of these so far?
I have not, but I do know back in the days, which people may not know, people that were suspected of being vampires, they were actually dug up after they were buried, and people put a stake through their heart, and in a lot of cases they beheaded them. And so that's very factual events that took place way back hundreds of years ago.
And a lot of superstition around that too as well.
Yeah.
And number 5 here, which is that Juri Grando, he was actually a peasant from Croatia who died in 1656, and he allegedly terrorized villagers in the area for 16 years after his death. And official documents from that time name him a Strigon, and it's S-T-R-I-G-O-N, and that was the local name in Croatia for vampire. And number 4 was the Hunderprest of Melrose Abbey. And the Hunderprest was a nickname given to 11th century priest of Melrose Abbey in the Scottish borders. And he was given the nickname because of his favorite pastime, hunting on horseback with packs of hunting dogs. And Hunderprest means dog priest. And the story of the vampire in Melrose Abbey is based on around the time of 1138. And then we go to number 3, the vampires of New England. And there weren't many tales of vampires in America until the dark discovery of a grave in Griswold, Connecticut in 1990. The grave actually contained the bodies of farmers from the 1700s, and all of these bodies were normal except for one. One body had been beheaded, and its skeleton was rearranged in the shape of a Jolly Roger. And that's interesting fact in regards to that. Number 2 was the Gorbals vampire. And the tale started with the rumor that a vampire with iron teeth was at the Gorbals graveyard in Glasgow, Scotland. And the vampire had apparently taken 2 children. So that's another one in Scotland. And number 1 on the list was Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess. I've actually written a book on the Blood Countess myself, and she is perhaps the most famous vampire in history after Vlad the Impaler.
And that's number 1? Well, where the hell is, where's Vlad on the list?
That's just a list of number of ones that Vlad, they mentioned.
Where did you put Vlad on your list?
No, he wasn't on the list because he
wasn't on the list.
Because he's recognized. Dracula and Vlad are recognized, that people know who they are. These are people, a list of 10
Vlad
vampires.
Dracul, the name Dracul basically come from the Order of the Dragon, which was a Christian organization that defended Christianity. Although Vlad the Impaler was somebody who impaled many thousands of people on an open field, impaled their bodies in order to scare his enemies. And so he used very horrific tactics to ward off other invading armies. And so I did write a book on it called Vlad the Christian Warrior, and that's available on Amazon by Timothy Mark if you want to check that one out.
And at the beginning of my little 10 people spiel, I did mention that
Yeah, I remember that. I just didn't know
famous
what it was.
was Dracula, and then his historical counterpart was Vlad. So most people, when they think of vampires, it's Dracula or Vlad. But you know,
Well, a lot of people think that Bram Stoker invented Dracula, where that existed way before his time.
we actually took various historical references from some of these creatures, even Vlad the Impaler, as an idea for his book. And we look forward to, in the future on Tickle Trunk of Horrors, we will be having a podcast with Daiquiri Stroker very soon as well. So that'll be another exciting podcast.
That's next month, actually.
In September, that's right. He has a new book called Dracul coming out, and we'll be discussing his book, and again, we'll be discussing vampires. But really, I mean, vampires, you know, again, like I stated, when people think of vampires right away, it's Dracula or it's Vlad the Impaler. And these 10 people that I listed, not too many people may have thought them as vampires. And what it really goes to show you is that throughout history, in different countries and different cultures, there have been vampire-like creatures made reference to, and the superstition again of chopping the head off, stake through the heart. And even I've heard of a Romanian superstition where is if somebody was suspected of being a vampire and they were newly buried, if you put a white horse loose in a cemetery, and the white horse was said to stomp on the grave of a person that was suspected of being a vampire. And that's a real superstition that people really adhere to.
Yeah, so, you know, check out my book on Vlad the Impaler, the Christian Warrior, on Amazon. Vlad the Christian Warrior, by Timothy Mark, me. And it tells you about how Vlad sat and ate dinner as his enemies were being impaled, and he dipped his bread in the blood. And so, very interesting stories in there. We even have stories about Vlad that you may have never heard of before. So it's definitely a good book. I just don't understand today's fascination where you got all these groups of people that are in these vampire communities. That's what I don't understand, because it makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the conversations we're hoping to have today in today's podcast that will really shed light on maybe some misconceptions, or people may not be aware what it's like to belong to a vampire society, or be because there's even psychic vampires out there. We're not discussing psychic vampires today, because that's a whole different ball game in regards to paranormal, spiritual realm, in regards to psychic vampires. Cedric Whittaker is a vampire elder in the Sabretooth Clan in New Orleans, and he's also a paranormal investigator. So that's kind of wearing two different hats, as it were. So that's going to be interesting how he can encompass being an elder and being a paranormal investigator in New Orleans as well. And it would be quite interesting to hear what he has to say on that particular topic.
Yeah, I think for a lot of these groups in New Orleans, it's more of a tourist attraction. You got the tourists that come there, and they go and they visit. This is my perception. And they visit these clans or whatever, and they experience that, and they got something to remember for the rest of their lives about some vampire community. And this is kind of what I want Cedric to explain to us, like, how does this work? Do they drink real blood? Like, how does this vampirism of the modern day world work?
And they actually call themselves vampire lifestylers. So that's a term that maybe some of our listeners in Tickle Trunk of Horrors may not have heard of, vampire lifestylers. So we're really going to get into that topic, and again, hopefully Cedric can shed some light on exactly what that's like, and what it's like to be a vampire in a community in New Orleans. And a lot of us, when we think about New Orleans as well, we think of the paranormal, ghosts, voodoo, but we may not automatically think of vampires in New Orleans. I know when we were in New Orleans, there was a gentleman that was walking around like a vampire. I think I took a picture with him, or if I may stand corrected.
Yeah, I remember that guy. He was just like the not Boris, Bela Lugosi vampire with the cape and all that. And yeah, so you did take a picture with him, and yeah, there you go. It's part of the. It's almost like going into an amusement park when you go into New Orleans, but a lot of people don't realize that a lot of this stuff is based on stuff that really happened, and as far as people drinking blood and impaling people and bathing in blood and
Well, I think that there's a whole fascination with the whole idea of blood is a life giving. Really, it's a liquid. It's or even some people will call it an elixir of life. And you know, people can't survive without blood. And there's been really a lot of taboo or anything in regards to blood, and maybe even a sensual twist to somebody. You know, all these young girls with the group that you don't really like. Having someone like Edward suck on their necks. So I mean, that's what young teenage girls, or even
what
the
group,
vampire.
what group that I don't like?
The movie Twilight.
Oh, Twilight, yeah.
And then there was even a TV show, The Vampire Diaries, where they had a lot of hot-looking girls that were vampires with hot-looking guys. So that was really for the younger generation, the teenagers that had a fascination with horror and vampires. So that was taking it from another level of Bram Stoker's Dracula to trying to capture the younger audience and you know, people that are really enthralled with the mysticism and the legends in regards to vampires. And again, another movie is Interview with a Vampire, that was, I think, filmed in New Orleans as well. Anne Rice's novels, Interview with a Vampire and The Vampire Lestat. So there's been a lot of movies, different. What's your favorite vampire movie?
My favorite vampire movie, I'd have to say, would be my favorite vampire would have to be Al Lewis when he played Grandpa on The Monsters.
That, or I like I'm a huge fan of Nosferatu, and you know, there was just something eerie about how Nosferatu was actually filmed and everything. So I'm a huge fan of Nosferatu.
I don't really get into the whole vampire thing, and that's why I'm more into the Frankenstein thing. So I don't really get into the vampire.
Well, Bela Lugosi was a good Dracula.
Well, I mean, he was the first well-known Dracula, and
part of the Universal.
But
Monster
I wouldn't say
series.
he's my favorite, because that's the one that everybody would announce as being their favorite. But
yeah, but even
the monsters had well, yeah, Kate Beckinsale or Sale, whatever. Was she a vampire?
Yeah, she was in the Underworld series. I mean, that's
okay,
vampires
yeah, well, I like
fighting
those movies now.
werewolves. So I mean, there's different kinds of vampire movies for different age brackets of individuals. So it's really everybody's taste. And again, it all stems from historical references. Even way back in Roman times, there was references to creatures that suck the blood off of people. So it's really a historical reference, and I think
you might want to check your message to see if this guy's calling, because we just want to double check, make sure our guest is going to be calling in here. But yeah, a lot of people don't know the Monsters actually made a couple of movies, and I've always liked the Grandpa character in the Monsters.
Well, I mean, that's one of my favorite series too.
And I guess I've always liked the Underworld films, even though I've never seen Kate Beckinsale suck the blood out of anybody in those movies. Does she do that?
Quite a few times, actually. She does.
Oh, well, hell, I must have been asleep.
I thought you would. I couldn't see how you'd miss that. I mean, I have to agree. She makes a good vampire, and I'm a huge fan of that particular series as well. So very, I really look forward to it, and they're well done. And there's a lot of vampire movies that are not well done, and it's just. I don't know, it's just some of them are better than others. And again, like I said, we're hoping to shed some light on in regards to what it's like to belong to the Sabretooth Clan, Vampire Clan. What is that even all about? And I mean, what is membership about? Do you have to go through any kind of ceremonial rites? Can you just walk around? And what's really involved in regards to this particular vampire culture and maybe shed some light into it as
call
well.
Right now, so this is probably our guest. Hello, welcome to the Tickle Trunk of Horrors show. Is this Cedric Whittaker?
This is Cedric. How are y'all doing?
We're good. How you doing today?
Another day in paradise.
Yeah, we were just doing an introduction for you, talking about the clan that you're a member of, the Sabretooth Clan. And we had a lot of questions. Like one of the questions that Alexandria had was, in order to join the clan, is there a membership requirements that y'all have in order to join the clan, or is it just open to everybody?
Actually, to officially be considered a Sabretooth, you get your fangs done by Father Sebastian, and that initiates you into the clan. You become part of the Sabretooth family at that point. And so we have people who hang out around with the clan that have not gotten their fangs done yet, or that sort of thing, and they're considered what we call black swans. They're basically family members and friends and stuff that are there, and want to hang out, all that kind of stuff, but they just haven't had their fangs done yet.
Okay, so this community, because to my knowledge, Sebastian's in California, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so who heads it out of the New Orleans area?
Out of New Orleans, that would be myself.
Oh, okay, so you're actually running it there. So if all right, so yeah, you're the group elder, and I guess the question that I would have, because like I was discussing, I know Alexandria understands this more than I do. I don't know a lot about the vampire community. Do y'all actually drink blood?
Now, there's a couple different types, I guess you'd say, categories of vampires. There are some out there in the community, not Sabretooths, that are what we call sanguine vampires. These individuals, some of them do drink blood for various different reasons. But as far as the Sabretooth Clan goes, we don't do that. And it's one of those things, if that's what, people want to do behind the, the closed doors of their world, that's their thing. But we don't condone that just because of the dangers that ensue with that in today's world.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That's what was confusing me a little bit there in the beginning when we was talking about it, because there's a lot of dangers with drinking blood today, for sure.
Yeah. And like I said, you have a couple of different categories, I use the term categories, of vampires out there. You've got the sanguines, which drink blood for different various reasons. You've also got your psi-vamps or psychic vampires who feed basically off of the energy of people around, that sort of thing. Prancing vampires who do the same thing, but they feed basically off energy via touch. So there's a whole plethora, what I guess we consider different levels of different styles of vampires that are out there in the world.
Okay, that's fascinating, because I know there's a lot of misconception out there in regards to the word vampire, and I'm familiar with psychic vampires, but what would inspire someone to want to join a vampire? And is this the right terminology, a vampire lifestyler? Is it a vampire community or a vampire clan? What's the proper wording?
I think you actually hit all three of them. I mean, all three of them, depending on your level of, I guess, immersion into the subculture of the vampiric world. You've got some people who they love the aesthetic of the vampire clan, the dressing, the contacts, the fangs, the going out at night, just the aesthetic of what it is to be vampiric. You've got some that do it just say once a year for, like, say for us, for the Endless Night Ball that we throw here in New Orleans, and they only do it once a year. You've got some people who live it practitioners who they don't attach themselves to a clan. They're more solitary, and they go out, they hang out at the clubs, or they do, you know, individual things, but they're not part of any organized clan, so to speak, or family or house.
Okay, going back to what you had said earlier, because when you said Sebastian has to make the fangs for people, is these permanent fangs, or are they just ones you can take in and out?
These are ones you can take in and out. They're custom built to each individual person. You sit down with Sebastian, and he custom builds your fangs. And so you go through the whole process, and it's almost a transformative event for people. I know it was for me when I went through it, because you go through this event where you're sitting there making the things, getting custom made your teeth. They can be taken in and out because you don't want to keep them in all the time, because eating normal food, you will shear them off. But you go through this transition from, you know, normal everyday looking individual to when you're done, because you're not allowed to see yourself with your thing till it's completely done. And as soon as you get to turn around, he hands you the mirror, and you get the first time that you get to do the mirror ceremony where you open your eyes, you look, and you see yourself with these predatory fangs. It's kind of for me, it was takes your breath away and kind of get in touch with that, you know, that little inner predator that everybody has inside of them. When those fangs are in, and you become a true, you know, member of the Sabretooth family.
Okay. The other question I would have for you is as far as like ceremonies and stuff like that, is this a more of a religious clan, or is it just for fun, or what is it?
Sorry, say that one more time. You guys broke up.
Oh, okay. Is this more of a is this more of a religious thing, or is it non-religious?
Again, you're delving off into a world where there's multiple different levels of the take, and you have some vampire clans that are religion. There is the force that moves throughout, you know, energy work and the environment. Some, you know, so you do have some vampires that it is a religious event to them. Again, like I said, you got others who religion doesn't even play into it. It's more of the aesthetic and the lifestyle that goes into what we consider vampires. Say, for example, for the Sabretooth, we have our day side, we have our night side. Our day side is our day-to-day activity and working, be it if we own a business, interacting with the world at large. Then you have your night side, which starts to go into that more mystical side of it. And for like myself personally, it's the dress. It's the going out into the quarter and tapping into those energies, the energy of people being, you know, around you, and being in the French Quarter in New Orleans as a vampire. So you kind of have that dichotomy of your day side, night side. But like you were saying, some people do full-blown religion, and there is a whole different level into that conversation.
Okay. So, in other words, what I'm getting from what you're saying, and I may stand corrected, is that some individuals they let their fang flag fly all the time. Some of them it's just at night, and then some of them maybe just when they attend the endless ball. So it all depends on how they view it, or even it could be even like cosplay. You're going to specific events, you're going to dress up like the cosplay figure that you want to, and then during the day you're conducting business. So I think it's just how deep or how strongly you want to view your participation.
Exactly, very well put. And that's exactly hitting the nail on the head. It depends on how deep you want to take your persona as a vampire. I mean, like myself, as not only a business owner but also a tour guide, I take what I would consider those characteristics of the vampire and try to put those into my daily life. That how I dress, how I act, and how I interact with other people, and try and, like I said, make that part of my daily life. But you're totally correct. That it all depends on the individual and how far and how deep they want to take it.
Well, let's take a look back at Cedric Whittaker for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, when you were a kid, were you into horror movies and things of that nature?
I was probably just as much as anybody else. What really drew me into the vampire world, and especially the Sabretooth side of the vampire world, was, to me, at that time, being a business owner, having started my own business at that point, there was a specific way that I felt people should treat each other with honor and respect. And I saw some of that in the Sabretooth Clan, and how vampires, that the vampire mythos and that vampire lore kind of did that with how you presented yourself to the world. That you come from a place of power and energy, but at the same time, you were still willing to take care of your clan, of your family, which was a big deal for me.
Yeah, because what I read about you, and you can tell me if this is true or not. I read that you're from Texas. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so that's currently where we're located, out in Texas. What drew you to? Is it the vampire community that actually drew you to New Orleans?
Honestly, I think it was the city herself. When you live here and you spend any time here, you'll really start to feel the energy that is New Orleans. She has a persona. She has an existence as a city, especially down in the quarter in those areas. And when you're down there, you feel that energy from 300 years of people being here and what's gone on in the city. And it's a very magical city to be in. And of course, being from the Houston area, it was 5 hours down I-10 to come visit, which I did a lot when I was a teenager. And so my wife and I got married here 15 years ago, and we had already in love with the city, which made that even more magical. And so we decided that we wanted to be here. Now, one of the odd things with the city of New Orleans is, like I said, she has a feeling of her own. And there are some people who come to the city of New Orleans to either visit or whatever, and they get hooked. She sinks her claws into them, and she won't let go, and they end up moving here and spending the rest of their lives here. I've also run into people who can spend 3 or 4 days here, and they're like, "Hey, that's enough. I've had enough of the energy here. I need to go." And then there's also people who I've run into who hit the ground here. They're here for a day, and they're like, "Nope, I can't handle this. I got to go." So it's really weird to try and put into what it's like living here into words, because you kind of have to experience it. But when you get down into the core, you really do feel that there is an energy around you in the city.
I think since Timothy and I have personally been there, and myself being an empath, my perception of New Orleans is she has a pulse, and every building and every brick has its own heartbeat, and people can feel overwhelmed, and you have a sense of whoever was there prior, their footprint is still left there, and that's why the energies for me is just so, sometimes can be over the top, but the whole town, she has a heartbeat on her own.
Very much so. There are times, I know people think that when I say it, they think I'm nuts, which is okay. There's, like you said, there are times you can feel that heartbeat. There are times you can almost feel her breathing when you're standing in the quarter. I know that there have been times that we have gone into the quarter and you just get this overwhelming feeling of, I don't need to be here, something's wrong. And we listened to it, we left, and come to find out later on that night there was multiple shootings somewhere on one of the streets. So you kind of, exactly like you said, you feel that imprint of everybody who's ever come through here, and that imprint has stuck. And, you know, from a paranormal side of the world, does it have to do with what is underneath the city of New Orleans? Does it have to do with, you know, the exact location that the city was built in? So it's, you know, you hit it perfectly. There is a pulse, there is a life here with over 300 years of people putting that energy into the city. And having a city exist that technically shouldn't exist.
That's amazing. And I think before we go into your work as a paranormal investigator, I have one more question. Why the name Sabretooth Clan? Why that name?
That name was developed by Father Sebastian years ago. And at one point, it was called the Sanguinarium, but again, like we talked about when we first started, that the Sanguinarium has a connotation of blood drinking. I know that Father Sebastian was very much wanted to distance from the blood drinking side of it. He has no issue with it. It's just that's not the thing for his clan and for the family. And so he developed the Sabretooth name, and that name has just stuck, and it's one we use now to
Cedric,
delineate the clan members. Yes, sir.
What was your all-time favorite vampire or Dracula movie?
I'm going to show my age, but Lost Boys.
Oh, I didn't even think about that one. Before you called, we was discussing that one, and come to think of it, that would have been my answer too.
Yeah, I'm a huge child of the '80s, and that was my. In fact, we were talking about last night in the quarter. That was my quintessential vampire movie for me growing up. And then really after that, I think would be Queen of the Damned, just for the fact of, from the character's point for Lestat, when he goes over the deep end and it's basically had enough of everybody hiding, and he calls everybody out. It's like, all right, fine, we're going to bring this in the light, and we're going to fight. So
yeah, the line, come out wherever you are.
Yeah, come out. I mean, just that blatant, in your face. I don't care if you're elders. I'm here. This is where I'm at. People need to know this is going on. I'm tired of hiding. I mean, I get that he comes to it from a egotistical point of view, but I still find the dichotomy of that character very, very deep.
All right, let's go into your the paranormal work that you do. Have you had do you do a lot of investigations right there in New Orleans?
We do a lot of investigations here in New Orleans. We do stuff, across the country. We've done a lot of stuff in Texas. We still come back home all the time to investigate there. In fact, about a month and a half ago, we did the abandoned old Yoakum Hospital there in Yoakum, Texas. Spent the night in there, got some beautiful evidence. We actually got to see the Blue Nun, got her caught on video. But yeah, we do investigations here, and very, very occasionally we'll even do private residence whenever somebody gives us a call and they have something in their house that they don't understand or that they're scared of. We will roll in with our equipment, try and get evidence for them. A lot of times people feel like they're crazy, like, did I imagine this? So we try and get them evidence, and we try and walk them through what they, how they want to deal with being in a haunted house, keeping in mind what you're saying with the city of New Orleans. Here we have basically what's called New Orleans haunted. Most of the buildings here have some kind of spirit activity in them to one varying degree or another. And so most locals here will call that New Orleans haunted. You get a glass that slides across the table. You get a door that will close occasionally on its own that shouldn't do that. That's New Orleans haunted. Yeah, we're just used to it because of the city we live in. So when you start getting some of the more extreme hauntings or activity, a lot of times that's when we'll come in trying to get, to grab evidence, and then also to try and figure out what the homeowner or the person there wants to do about it. And sometimes that means we have to bring in mediums if we're trying to get somebody to cross over, depending on the person's religious beliefs. If they want, they need to use or talk to a priest. whatever that person needs to make that home back into their home. That's their space.
Okay. If people wanted to look at some of the work that you've done, is there a YouTube channel for that?
We have a new YouTube channel, New Orleans Paranormal Explorers. Nope, we're the official Nope team. And we just got the YouTube channel up, and we're uploading videos now that we've gotten edited and ready to go back up. So yeah, New Orleans Paranormal Explorers.
New Orleans Paranormal Explorers. That's the YouTube channel, and
yes, sir.
That is awesome. I know you said you did the hospital in Yoakum, and I always wanted to go there and shoot a horror movie there. And
oh yeah, that place would be perfect for shooting a horror or zombie movie. The place just screams. I mean, the set deck is very easy to just do. There's not a whole lot of stuff you're gonna have to do to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You said you caught a nun in there, huh?
Yeah, there's the Legend of the Blue Nun there at the Yoakum Hospital. She is up on the third floor there by the pediatric area. I was doing a Facebook Live feed, walking through the third floor by myself, and as I'm walking through talking about some of the history and the legends there, people started hitting me up on my phone. They're like, go back, go back, go back. You caught something. When we went back and looked at it on the live feed, there is a blue figure that comes up out of the pediatrics area, and it flares up. You can see it move out and then completely disappear. And as you know, as I'm standing here, I was the only person on that floor at the time. So we got a good video of her.
That's amazing. And another question for you too: if somebody wanted to attend one of your tours in New Orleans, what could they expect by taking? Because I know you said you were a tour guide. What would be the anticipation of somebody wanting to experience one of your tours, and what kind of sets your tour apart from the other tours that that are going on in New Orleans?
Good questions. First, I'm a tour guide for Ghost Riders. On the walking tours, when you go on the walking tour, you will get to walk around and through like the streets of New Orleans. You get to go to some of the major locations here in the quarter that are legendary, especially now that American Horror Story came out. So you get to go by the Lalaurie Mansion, the Ursuline Convent, in those areas. And then our bus tours we take at night, we basically, the way I do my tour is I want to give you a full immersion experience into the paranormal world, as well as getting history of our cemeteries, of our burial practices here in the city. So we start off, we go to San Louis number 3, we talk about our burial practices, and then as we go through the cemeteries, we start ratcheting up the creepy factor. Basically, from them standing on the bus or next to the fence, by the time we get to Charity Hospital Cemetery, they're going deep into the middle of the cemetery. We bring paranormal equipment for these guys to use, so we have, K2s and spirit boxes and that sort of thing. We hand out K2s, and we let them have a very short glimpse of what it's like to be on a paranormal investigation. And there's a lot of time that Charity will step up, and we've gotten all kinds of evidence from our tourists that are on the tour. They picked up videos and pictures. We've got EVPs. So I think with ours, it's more of an immersive experience into the underworld that is here in New Orleans, because I truly believe that New Orleans is two cities. You've got the daytime city that everybody sees, they walk around, they enjoy the jazz, the music, the food, and then you have the other side of New Orleans, the other city, which is the dark underside, where the ghosts and the vampires like to hang out.
Right.
Hey, what's the most scariest location in New Orleans?
I would say, scare-wise, and to make you personally, it's not for me, but from what I've heard from most of my tourists, would be once they hear the story of the Ursuline Convent and the birthplace of the vampire lore here in the city of New Orleans, a lot of them are like, we're done, we're leaving, and they run away. For me personally, the place that's got the most energy, that occasionally you get that feeling, okay, there's something that's dark here, and it's time for me to back out, is some nights when we get into Charity, because keeping in mind where Charity Hospital Cemetery sits, one, you have the crossroads right there of Canal and City Park Boulevard, so you have a hub of energy in what most of us here in the paranormal world believe is a portal. But then you are surrounded for miles in every direction with nothing but cities of the dead. So you've got this huge amount of dead energy, of spirit activity and energy that is focused in that area. And when you start doing investigations, we start doing spirit box activity, in our ITC session, you start pulling that towards you. There are nights that it can get a little intense. One evening, we were in there doing an ITC session, clear as day across the geo box. We got, he's coming, we asked who's coming, and then in English and in Spanish we got El Diablo, and then it came back to the devil. And then you got this very overwhelming, heavy feeling that's like, man, we're done here. So we left. So that would be probably one of the scarier places I've been. But I mean, New Orleans is New Orleans. There's times that she can make you scared, even if you're standing on Bourbon Street.
On that note of being scared and maybe going into something maybe dark and malevolent, do you have something that you do personally, ritualistically, to prepare yourself, protect yourself prior to going into these potential minefield of psychic paranormal energies?
A lot of it is internal. It's preparing to know that, like you said, we're going to go in there into a minefield where there's psychic energy that's going to be hitting us from different directions. I know for me and my wife personally, we're done with tours, especially into Charity. Before we even come back into our house there, we smudge with sage. We ask our ancestors and that to give us strength to protect us and our house. We have coffin nails that have been blessed in holy water around on each door to kind of ward off some of the bad things from following us back here. And I know for a fact we have 3 spirits that are in our house that have followed us from site to site to site as we moved. But mostly it's mental. It's to, and for me, when we go into Charity, especially at night with my tour groups, how I prepare myself mentally is I know that I am responsible for these individuals, these however many, 32 people, how many people are on my bus. I'm responsible for them. They're relying on me as the quote unquote expert out there. So I guess, my time where that gives me a little bit more inner strength in my head to say, no, I can't run. I need to sit here and, at the very least, take care of these guys. We've never had an incident where something dark has shown up while we had a tour group in there. And keeping in mind what a lot of people misconstrue paranormal activity, paranormal investigation, they think it's what they see in a Hollywood horror flick. And as much good as the TV shows have done for us in letting people know that there is this paranormal investigation stuff going, it also kind of hurts us a little bit because people don't realize that they see 30 minutes of an investigation on TV. What they don't see is the other 12 hours of unmitigated boredom and us telling dad jokes on the radio as we're running through buildings and that sort of thing. So I guess I'm getting off of your question, and I apologize. But,
no, that's fine. That's fine.
So yeah, that's really what we do. I have my wife and I are both eclectic pagans, so I have a very strong background in Native American religion, so I rely on that a lot in knowing that my ancestors are there with me and to protect me. And you got, as a paranormal investigator, you also have to know when to hold them and when to fold them and know, okay, I'm getting into an area that I need to back out of. This doesn't feel right. And not let yourself walk into those situations unless you absolutely have to, where you're, for lack of a better term, you're face to face with a demon.
Right.
So in your religion, because you said you're an eclectic pagan, In your religion, do y'all have a supreme being, or how does that work?
There is a supreme being. There's a supreme energy, and I personally believe that everything has an energy signature. That's all we are is energy. I believe that that energy can manifest in the best way for that individual person to understand that energy. In my beliefs, not being, I again have nothing against the Christian religion, Christian philosophy. That is how that deity, that higher power, best talks to those individuals. And I believe that deity, that energy, whatever it is you want to call it, the universe, is going to present itself to each individual person in the best way for that individual person to understand and to have faith in. Because at the end of the day, it's all faith. That's all we have is what we believe in our hearts that is there on the other side.
I had another question for you too. That it seems that you wear many hats or many different personas. Could you maybe explain to the listeners what Airship Isabella is, or even to us?
Airship Isabella. We started Airship Isabella 10 years ago. We were in the steampunk world, big time in the steampunk world. The crew itself, we were a basically props and costuming company with a very in-depth storyline behind it. So that was not only the steampunk group that we had formed, it was also the company that I built. And so for the business side of it, we built props and costumes for the general public as well as for the TV and movie industry. We did all of the leather for AMC's Into the Badlands. And we would go to conventions all over the country and bring the steampunk subculture and that in the Dark Victorian to conventions all over the country. And like I said, we would also build custom costumes, custom gear for people. We were very leather heavy builders, doing a lot of suits of armor and that sort of thing. And so that's where the Airship Isabella and the moniker usually in front of Cedric Whittaker is Sky Captain Cedric Whittaker. But I don't use that moniker when I'm, doing my stuff in the vampire world or as a investigator or tour guide.
Okay, if people listening, they're on their way to New Orleans and they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that to get on your tour?
Best way to do that, get on tour is ghostwriters.com and set up, they have places to set up tours. And they can also friend us on New Orleans Paranormal Explorers. We have a Facebook group. And we tell all of our tourists and anybody out there listening, if you want to friend us on there, we post evidence that we find on our tours and we'll do another investigation. And we also post up if we're going to be going out of state somewhere, we will put that on there. And if people are close by and they're like, hey, we live 10 minutes up the road, we'll do a meet and greet meet up, and if it's possible, take them on an investigation with us if they'd like to go on a paranormal investigation.
Okay, I'll link your website to this. And another question I have for you is the best place to eat in New Orleans.
Best place to eat in New Orleans. Wow, that's a rough one.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that question is because we were there and we spent a week there, and we were looking for good gumbo, and we didn't find it, ironically enough.
I know the Gumbo House has good gumbo. There's a poor boy shop, New Orleans Poor Boy, there on Bourbon and which my wife is link because then she can good with the addresses of these places. But you can just look at the po' boys. Probably has the best po' boys I've had in the city. And like I said, the Gumbo House is a really good place to get gumbo. The other really good place to eat is like someplace like Birdie Mart, and a lot of people don't realize this, but you at Birdie Mart, if you walk in, it's just like a little bitty corner grocery store until you walk to the back. And you walk to the back, and there's food prepared, and there's no tables to sit. There's basically It's amazing. And that's one of the things, I mean, even like being in Texas, where, you know, the best Mexican food is that little hole in the wall taqueria. Same thing here in New Orleans, the best places to eat. Sometimes are off the beaten path, and just ask a, you know, ask a local while you're here, where's the best place to go get this, the best place to go get this, and they'll probably tell you something that you didn't even think about.
Okay, yeah, we appreciate that advice. Next time we're out there, we're going to hit those places up for sure.
Yeah, and next time you guys are out here, let me know. I'd love to go take you by and show you some of the places we go eat on a regular basis.
Oh, absolutely. We want to partake in the tour too.
Love to, and love to take you guys on investigation, take you guys in there and show you Charity Hospital Cemetery, and touch and feel some of that history that is there at Charity. Because the sad thing with Charity Hospital Cemetery, a whole lot of locals don't even realize it's there anymore. It's one of our original paupers fields, and in that field, besides being surrounded by all these cities of the dead, in that paupers field, you're dealing with 100 to 150,000 people who were interred in that field in the mass graves during our yellow fever outbreaks and a lot of the epidemics that happened here in the city, because she was a very deadly city for a very long time. And so a lot of those souls were entered there, and as far as the spirits go, they got sick, they fell asleep, and they woke up in a field. So you deal with a lot of spirits that are very confused, some who are afraid to cross over, all that kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting place to walk around, and you can feel the history just kind of radiating from the location.
Yeah, we'll definitely come out there and check that out with you for sure. That sounds awesome.
And before we sort of head out, and like I said, it was such a huge pleasure to be enlightened and receive some insight. If there's a listener out there that maybe feels that maybe the Sabretooth Clan may be something that they want to pursue in the future, how do they go about that? What is the do you have to live in New Orleans to?
You don't have to live in New Orleans. We have the Sabretooth Clan is international. We have major groups in like I said, all over the world, but you know, New Orleans, Los Angeles, New York, Prague, Paris, London. Father Sebastian has spent a very large amount of time setting up the Sabretooth Clan and all over the country. So you can look up vampireworld.com. It's a good place. You can also find out where Sebastian is going to be. Get on the list to get your fangs made, which I would advise everybody to do. It's a life-altering experience to have those fangs and have it, and it's very empowering when you realize that you have those things that touches something primal in you, that is that predator that all of us have, and you turn around, you look in that mirror, and all of a sudden you have these pronounced fangs. I personally think everybody should go through the mirror ritual and get a taste of that, and that level of power that is empowering to people. Yeah, they don't have to be here in the city of New Orleans, but like I said, Father Sebastian comes in once a year here for about a week when we get ready to do Endless Nights. We are starting to do what are called salons here in the city of New Orleans, which will be 4 times a year right now. These are going to be high-end gatherings, one-night gatherings here in the city at different locations where you dress in your finest and you come out and get a chance in a very fine location to interact with other vampires.
And did you, a quick question before we end it, did you have a fledgling lisp?
For a very short period of time I did. I kind of cheated, and I wore mine every day because I didn't want that lisp. And my wife still has a slight lisp with her things occasionally because she doesn't wear them anywhere as much as I do. I wear them on my tours almost every night. But I think everybody has that lisp. And the best way, being a former theater student, is you just sit there and you go through your theater warm-ups and learn to talk, and sit there and talk into the mirror until you can A, talk about a lisp, and B, talk about biting yourself.
Oh.
Well, Cedric, we appreciate you calling us and enlightening us on the vampire culture. And actually,
it was a huge honor. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get back with you with the appropriate links, and we'll let you know when we're going to be out there in New Orleans.
Sounds great. If you guys ever need any questions or anything like that, just give me a holler.
We will. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day now.
Thank you guys. You have a good day too.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was a very enlightening podcast, to say the least. Sort of expanded my horizons in regards to the vampire lifestyle and community. That Cedric Whittaker is an elder in the Sabretooth Clan out of New Orleans. He did say that they are in quite a few places around the world as well, and he's a paranormal investigator and a tour guide.
Yeah, it's like I say, going into this, in the beginning of the show, I said I'm a Judeo-Christian. I didn't understand the vampire culture. But now that he's explained it in the way that he's explained it, it sounds like his clan would be more for something that I would be open to. Because, one, it's not a religion. And, two, they don't drink blood.
Right, and he also owns a company that does leather and movie props for different kind of movies.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know if anybody's seen the picture that we had on the banner promoting the show, but he had a pretty nice looking vest on there. Kind of looked like something from the underworld or something. Huh?
Yeah, he's into steampunk, and if there's a lot of people that are into the steampunk culture. He is the CEO of Cavalry Leather and Props. So they do, again, movie props, and if you have a specific costume or armor or some kind of maybe cosplay that you'd like him, their company makes that.
Well, man, we should have gave him the opportunity to talk about that. I was unaware of that.
Well, we touched base on a little bit when he said he did movie props for films, and if you have your maybe...
Yeah, but the name of the company, what's the name of the company
It's
again?
Cavalry Leather and Props.
Cavalry Leather and Props.
They've done movies, TV shows,
yeah.
And any kind of costume that you want costuming, they will do that as well. And so he wears many hats. He's not only the vampire elder of the Sabretooth Clan, he does paranormal research, he is a tour guide, and then he's into the costuming, leather in regards to the Cavalry Leather and Props as well.
Yeah, so if anybody's going out to New Orleans, you definitely want to check out the Sabretooth Clan. Seems like a clan, like I said, even I'd be interested in it, as far as, you know, they don't drink blood and they're not a religion, which is a plus. And plus the tour that he does sounds pretty interesting, and I'd definitely recommend that one. I can tell you from somebody who's been to New Orleans, and we checked out several of the tours there. And we didn't look at his when we were there, but we looked at it, several of the other tours, and they were not that great. With his, it seems like it's more interactive, and it seems like it's will be the best tour in New Orleans.
Highly recommend it.
Yep. So that'd be it for us.
Take care. What an awesome show, guys.
Bye.
Bye.